Silva to the stage from the Ocean Purpose Project.
Okay. All right. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'm Mathilda I'm the CEO and founder of Ocean Purpose Project. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the First Nations custodians of North Carolina and pay my respects to all elders past and present. I acknowledge the 140,000 people of my hometown of Pasir Ris, Singapore, formerly Kampong Pasir Ris, and I also acknowledge the first peoples of Singapore, the Orang Laut, also known as the Sea People. Good evening, distinguished guests from around the world at the Blue Economy Summit, and warm thanks to the Oceans at Duke community, Sanduni, Amelia, Natalie for this opportunity to share my story and the work of Ocean Purpose Project from the humble Southeast Asian shores of Pasir Ris, Singapore. At the end of my presentation, I'm sure you'll have questions. There always are. Let's keep the conversation going at the Ocean Purpose Project booth, kindly provided by the Oceans at Duke team. All right, let me take you back in time 8 years ago, the year that my life changed. In 2015, my life was great. I used to be on Singapore Idol. I wrote, I directed, I acted on TV, and I led social media communities for the national broadcaster, telco, pharmaceuticals, banks. And as if my life wasn't crazy enough, on the weekends I coached and paddled competitively in dragon boat and outrigger canoe, representing my country in races such as this one in Boracay in the Philippines. We were having a great time. We were winning medals, swimming, diving, paddling, partying, drinking, and not realizing that the very water that we were in was also where all the waste, from sewage to chemicals to plastic, from that island was being pumped into these very same beaches that we were standing on. That's actually a drone shot taken by one of our teammates, Richard. Now that green stuff we were wading in, that was an algae bloom. When I came home after racing for the weekend, I was hospitalized for a few days. My immune system shut down. Many paddlers were hospitalized, some had to be airlifted into Manila. In just the span of a few days, I developed 3 autoimmune conditions, which affects my mobility, turns my hair and skin white. I've got very thick makeup and I've dyed my hair black, special for y'all today. Now, I didn't have any idea what was happening to me, but 3 years later, President Rodrigo Duterte shut the island of Boracay down for 6 months due to environmental violations. I had so many questions. How could this happen to the tourism juggernaut of the Philippines? Doesn't it make good business sense to keep the oceans clean? Most of all, why was this happening to me? I didn't harm anyone. I was just representing my country. Why did the ocean I love make me so sick in this way? It took a fellow dragon boater and lifeguard in Boracay who sent me a message and said, my child has these white spots on his hand like you have on your face. Does he have what you have? And that's when I realized that ocean pollution isn't just happening just to me, but to 2.1 billion Asians who live near the coast. This image isn't just an image from Indonesia or the Philippines. This could very well be an image of the children in my own town in Singapore playing in waters just like this. Now, we can see all of the plastics and the other forms of debris, but what about the chemicals that are in that water that you just can't see? And I thought, what happened to me wasn't fair. What about all the children around Asia? Now it turns out that the same green stuff washing up in Boracay was also washing up in my own hometown. Add to that the massive amount of plastic waste, oil spill, chemicals from pesticides and fertilizers, and it's clear that this wasn't just happening in Boracay, but just walking distance from where I live on the beach. I felt I had to do something to right the wrongs of what happened to me. But, what does a TV person or a Singapore idol really have to do in a space like ocean conservation? I didn't want to just do another TV, radio, print, and social media campaign. I wanted to take things one step further and create actual projects. So in 2020, I quit a great job at a bank and started Ocean Purpose Project, an NGO and certified social enterprise based in the beach town of Pasir Ris, Singapore. And then, of course, pandemic hit, and then I said, oh, I made a mistake, please take me back. And then they were like, no, you gotta stick to it. Now at Ocean Purpose Project, we do typical NGO stuff like creating behavior change campaigns and organizing beach cleanups. But we also go beyond by protecting the oceans through tech innovations like plastic to fuel, as well as nature-based solutions such as seaweed and mussel bioremediation. I'll walk you through each of these projects, starting with plastic to fuel. This starts with a very, very simple question, which is if plastic comes from oil, why don't we turn it back into oil and go one step further to create hydrogen? Now, let's be honest. This scene of plastic piled on shorelines repeats itself from China to Indonesia to Singapore, because Asia is responsible for a whopping 81% of global ocean plastic pollution. That number is rising as we speak, and that pollution is making its way around the world to you. Many questions abound. Who's responsible? What's an effective solution that benefits the poorest coastal communities in Asia? How can we recycle the unrecyclable plastic trash that is heavily contaminated with organic matter, and some of the plastics not even labeled? So instead of mechanical recycling, we're talking about converting plastic to fuel, which would allow us to convert mixed ocean plastic waste into target fuels by cracking the chemical bonds through pyrolysis. Once the plastic is converted into fuel oil, which is classified as low sulfur fuel, and it's able to be used for marine vessels as per IMO 2020 regulations, it can be used as a feedstock for other chemicals and further separated into other products. Now, turning plastic to fuel began in 2019, where I teamed up with a Pilates teacher and 3,000 villagers on the island of Madang, Indonesia, turning this 10,000 Singapore dollar crappy yet efficient machine that converts ocean plastics into free low sulfur fuel oil. Now, though this project created a clear case of how the poorest coastal community cleaned their beaches, even turned ocean plastic into fuel till today, the machine was too basic. It released hydrocarbon gases, the fuel was stored improperly in plastic bottles, the factory had rattan walls, a definite safety hazard, and in fact the villagers were very upset when I told them that they had to take down this beautiful rattan wall that they spent weeks weaving and painting and all of that. And it was evident to me that this dinky-die approach to solving ocean plastic wasn't good enough. And so in 2020, as the world was in lockdown, the OPP team started pulling together over 40 petrochemical advisors to tear our plastic to fuel project apart and help us optimize yield, deployment, safety, and efficiency. The concept of the OPP PTF unit was born. Here's how it works. In every OPP PTF unit, plastic is sorted and shredded, pyrolyzed as fuel, gas is sequestered, and fuel is collected. An OPP PTF unit can have multiple use cases at a polluted coastal community, beside a landfill, in field during crisis response to storms, and the profits channeled back to the communities who need it most. Here's a real example of how the OPP PTF unit is being investigated right now in Singapore as a possible solution for the shipping industry. Just one tanker company using the OPP PTF unit could convert its 1.1 million tons of plastic yearly into 809,000 tons of low sulfur fuel oil. With energy prices as they are, this new class of sustainable maritime fuel reduces costs, has a lower carbon footprint, and turns trash into treasure. Turning plastic into low sulfur fuel sounds possible to achieve, but I'm sure all of you are thinking right now, doesn't this perpetuate the use of fossil fuels? This is where the OPP PTF unit takes chemical recycling one step further. Voice of God. Turning ocean plastics into hydrogen. With Singapore announcing its commitment to transitioning to hydrogen in a multi-fuel future, suddenly plastic to hydrogen becomes a third to fourth possible fuel supply for our island state. The byproduct of the conversion of plastic to hydrogen is a highly valuable product called CNTs, or carbon nanotubes. 117 times stronger than steel, carbon nanotubes have an extraordinary electrical and heat conductivity with the ability to replace trace metals in our smartphones and laptops. I don't know about you, but I definitely want to use a mobile phone powered by ocean plastic. Now, these are not just esoteric theories or concepts in labs. The OPP-PTF team and our research partners at Nanyang Technological University of Singapore, as well as other engineering partners, were able to create this data for 1 kilogram of unwashed plastics collected from Lombok, Indonesia. A high concentration of hydrogen was found. That's the stuff our lead engineer Richard is holding in the silver bag. He was a bit upset with me because he was like, this stuff could blow any minute. But I was like, Richard, you're 70 years old, stay one for the team. Even better, the byproduct of this conversion, which is carbon nanotubes, is highly conductive. Perfect for use in a hydrogen fuel cell. And best of all, it's high value. Though the OPP-PTF unit has yet to be funded, as you can see, the work has not stopped. Ocean plastics, however, is not the only form of pollution plaguing our seas. Harmful algae bloom is wreaking havoc on our waters in Singapore. Let's hear about this from one of the fishermen that we work with, Uncle Heng in Pasir Ris, just before Chinese New Year.
叫吴信，今年66岁。刚来的时候就是一个做活的嘛，把它拆掉，就是养鸡咯，做东西咯，哪一边快就做哪一边咯。因为2个人做而已嘛，跟一个帮手。离死的，那个糟糕了，就是我不会讲形容啊。 但是你看那个鱼死啊，整片啊都是鱼死鱼，一只也没有回。我们养鱼啊，要养大概1年多才可以长大可以卖，所以你养了啊，连那个美鱼都死的嘛，都要从头再养起。那养起的时候啊，又中了第2次、第3次、第4次，第1次就最少都500钱。最困难的是资金哦，因为我们这个养鱼的资金是很大的。 所以就是要找人家来投资，所以你看养鱼就是有中心在这边。在老人院还在哪里？没有东西做，就是很辛苦。我是没有读书了，但是我是做铁匠，也是做几10年了。多支持新加坡的养鱼业。新加坡养鱼业是。 可以放那个药水啊、红木啊，很难养大啊，因为人家养半个月，我们要养1年。多部分的现在环保的就比较多了，年轻人这一代就比较注重环保。因为我们是新加坡人啊，新加坡人照顾新加坡，但是现在照顾你，那肯定要照顾新加坡。
As you can see, algae blooms are slowly choking wildlife and jeopardizing the 115 fish farms in the north of Singapore. This is a 38 million USD problem in Singapore, spreading throughout Asia and beyond. Caused by excess fertilizers and pesticides that wash into our waters from our neighbors in the north, coming from oil palm plantations. Sites like this is a yearly occurrence. But how can we clean the sea of chemicals? So at Ocean Purpose Project, we turn pollution into solutions, mobilizing traditional farmers just like Uncle Heng and indigenous people as well as universities, deploying curtains of native seaweeds and mussels that filter seawater and protect traditional fish farms that make up 84% of domestic seafood supply. Surprisingly, there have been over 20 species of Asian seaweeds found growing wild in the waters of my hometown. The first such categorization ever made. Among them, Capophycus, which is used globally as as agar in everything from ice cream to soaps, explaining why